Hello, and welcome. I'm so glad you're here with me in our quiet little corner of the cosmos. Tonight we're not journeying outward to the farthest stars or the edges of space. Instead, we're taking a slow, gentle trip in the opposite direction. We're going to be exploring the most intimate and elusive mystery of them all. The one that's happening inside you right now. We're going to softly, quietly, ask the question that has puzzled philosophers and scientists for millennia. What is this feeling of being aware? What is consciousness? And where exactly does it come from? It sounds like such a simple thing, doesn't it? After all, it's the most familiar experience we will ever know. It's the taste of late-night tea on your tongue, the weight of a cozy blanket, the quiet hum of the room around you. It's the very awareness that is listening to my voice right now. And as always, my hope is that this gentle exploration will help you drift off into a peaceful sleep. But tonight's topic is a little different. It's the very thing that sleep seems to take away. So if this journey into the heart of awareness keeps you awake for a little while, I suppose that's a fair trade. We'll have swapped a few moments of rest for a deeper sense of wonder about what it means to be awake at all. And before we begin our quiet voyage inward, I have a gentle request. If you enjoy spending time here in our little corner of the cosmos, a simple like or a subscription really does help this calm space to grow. It's a lovely, quiet way of letting others know they can find a moment of peace here too. On the topic of awareness, I'd also love to ask you something. I'm curious to hear about a time when you felt completely and utterly present. It doesn't need to be some grand, life-changing event. In fact, it's often in the smallest, most ordinary moments. Maybe it was the sudden perfect focus of watching a single drop of rain trace a path down a window pane, or the feeling of the sun, warm on your closed eyelids on a spring afternoon. Perhaps it was the silence just after a snowfall, where the whole world seemed to be holding its breath with you. If you feel like sharing, please leave a short description of that moment in the comments. It's always so beautiful to read through these quiet, collected memories, a little archive of what it feels like, for all of us, to simply be here. So now, let's begin that quiet exploration. Wherever you might be, allow yourself to settle just a little more deeply. Let your shoulders soften. Take a slow, quiet breath in and let it go just as gently. There is nothing you need to accomplish here. Nothing to solve or remember. My voice is simply here to be a quiet companion as you drift. This is just an invitation to turn your awareness inward. Not with any kind of effort, but with a soft and gentle curiosity. A quiet space to wonder. Ready? Let's begin with the one thing that is always with you, no matter where you are or what time it is, the simple, subtle sensation of being here. Just for a moment, notice the act of noticing itself, the awareness that is hearing these words, the quiet presence that feels the air on your skin, or the weight of the blanket. That is where our journey starts. So now that you are settled, and we have gently turned our attention inward, let's begin to quietly unpack this thing we call awareness. It feels like a single unified whole, doesn't it? The simple feeling of being you. And yet, for centuries, philosophers and scientists have found it helpful to make a gentle distinction, to talk about consciousness as if it comes in two different, but deeply connected, flavors. Let's start with the first flavor. It's sometimes called access consciousness. Think of it like a vast, silent, and wonderfully efficient library within your mind. This is the part of your awareness that has access to information. It's the librarian that knows which thoughts are available, which memories are on which shelf, and which sensations are currently arriving. It's the system that allows you to take that information and use it to guide your thoughts, your speech, and your actions. It's the functional, operational side of the mind. The quiet, behind-the-scenes machinery. But then there is the other kind, and this is where the real mystery begins. This is phenomenal consciousness. If access consciousness is the librarian that can find you a book about the color red, phenomenal consciousness is the actual, personal, and completely private experience of seeing red. It's the feeling itself. These raw, subjective experiences have their own quiet, poetic name, qualia. It is the specific saltiness of a tear, the unique ache of nostalgia, the gentle coolness of a pillow against your cheek. It's not the information that these things are happening, but what it is like for them to happen to you. One is the brain's ability to process the world. The other is its ability to feel it, and that feeling that is the ghost in the machine. That lovely, haunting phrase from the last section, the ghost in the machine. It wasn't just a casual metaphor. It is, itself, the ghost of an idea that has shaped our quiet, personal feelings about ourselves for almost 400 years. To understand where it comes from, let's take a gentle stroll back in time. Picture a quiet room in 17th century France, lit by the soft flicker of a fireplace. Here sits a philosopher, René Descartes, wrapped in his dressing gown, deep in thought. He has set himself a grand and lonely task, to doubt everything it is possible to doubt, in order to find one single thing that is absolutely certain. He doubted his senses, which could be tricked. He doubted the physical world, which could be a dream. But in the midst of all this doubting, he realized something beautiful. The very act of doubting proved that there had to be a doubter to do the doubting, a thinking thing. And in that quiet, revolutionary moment, he found his certainty. I think, therefore I am. The proof of your existence, he argued, isn't in your body, but in the simple, undeniable fact that you are here, now, aware that you are listening. And this thinking thing, this awareness, Descartes decided it was not made of physical stuff at all. It was something entirely different. This is the heart of his famous idea, which we now call dualism. He imagined the body as an intricate biological machine, a bit like a complex and beautiful clockwork automaton. It follows the laws of physics. It rusts, it breaks, it winds down, but the mind, the soul, the conscious self, that was something else, a non-physical, ethereal substance. It was the puppeteer in the puppet show. The ghost in the machine. Of course, this elegant idea immediately runs into a quiet but profound problem, a question that has echoed through the centuries since. If the mind is a ghost and the body is a machine, how exactly does the ghost pull the levers? How does a non-physical thought, like the decision to lift your arm, cause a physical body to move? Descartes himself made a noble guess, suggesting a tiny, unpaired gland in the center of the brain. The pineal gland might be the bridge, the place where the soul and the body met. It was a poetic attempt to connect two separate worlds. And ever since, this has been the central puzzle, the search for the place where the ghost touches the machine. And so for centuries, that was the search, the quiet, persistent hunt for the bridge that Descartes had imagined. Scientists and philosophers looked for a single place, a special mechanism, a secret switchboard, where the non-physical mind could connect with the physical body, where the ghost touched the machine. But what if they were looking for the wrong thing? What if the mystery wasn't in how two separate things connect, but in how one single thing, the machine itself, could learn to create its own ghost? This is the gentle but profound shift that began to take place as science moved into the modern era, a move away from dualism, towards a viewpoint we now call materialism. And it doesn't suggest that your consciousness isn't real, or beautiful, or mysterious. It simply suggests that its home is right here, woven into the very fabric of the physical world. Let's imagine it like this. Think of a grand orchestra. You have 100 musicians, each with their own instrument. A single note from a lone violin is just a sound. A single beat from a drum is just a tap. You can study each musician, each instrument, each sheet of music down to the fibers of the paper, and you will never find the symphony in any one of them. And yet, when the conductor raises their baton, and all those individual notes and rhythms begin to weave together in a vast, intricate, and perfectly timed pattern, something new is born. A symphony emerges. It is a thing with its own beauty, its own emotional power, its own existence, but it doesn't live outside of the orchestra. It is what the orchestra does when it works together. The symphony is an emergent property of the system itself. And this is the modern scientific view of consciousness. Your brain, with its tens of billions of neurons, is the orchestra. Each neuron is a single musician, firing off a tiny electrical signal, a quiet, simple note. But when they fire together, in breathtakingly complex patterns, across a web of trillions of connections, you emerge. The subjective feeling of being aware, of seeing the color red, of feeling the warmth of a blanket, that is the music. Consciousness is not a ghost that inhabits the brain. Consciousness is the symphony that the brain plays for itself. This, of course, doesn't solve the mystery. In a way, it only deepens it. The question is no longer, how does the ghost pull the levers of the machine? The question has become, how on earth does the machine compose such beautiful music? How does a collection of physical cells, obeying the ordinary laws of physics and chemistry, give rise to the entirely private, internal, and deeply personal feeling of being you? And answering that question means we must now turn our gentle gaze away from searching for ghosts and look squarely, with a new sense of wonder, at the machine itself. And so, our quiet ghost hunt is over. The search for the place where a non-physical mind touches a physical body, the bridge that Descartes so elegantly imagined, has itself become a ghost, a beautiful echo of a question from another time. We are no longer looking for a connection between two separate worlds. Instead, we become quiet explorers of a single, deeply mysterious world, the 3-pound universe of tissue and electricity resting inside your head. The question shifts from a philosophical one to a biological one. If the music of awareness is being played by the orchestra of the brain, then our new task is simple, though profoundly difficult. We must go looking for the musicians. Where in this intricate, living network does the symphony of the self arise? Is there a specific corner of the brain, a kind of consciousness module, that acts as the grand conductor, telling all the other parts what to play? Or is it something more subtle, more distributed, a shared melody that no single part can claim, but that all of them create together, in a constant flowing dialogue of electrical whispers? It's a search, not for a ghost, but for a mechanism, a search for the quiet, biological engine of what it feels like to be you. And that is where our journey takes us next. So, how does a scientist begin a search like this? When you are faced with an orchestra of 86 billion musicians, how do you go about finding the ones playing the melody of the mind? You don't just point a microphone at the entire roaring symphony and hope to understand it all at once. That would be overwhelming. Instead, you would try something more subtle. You would ask the orchestra to play just one, single, sustained note, and then you would listen, very carefully, for the exact group of musicians that are required to produce that one sound. Not the ones shuffling their feet, or turning a page, or coughing quietly, just the ones whose actions are directly and undeniably linked to that single lonely note. This is the modern scientific approach to consciousness, a gentle but powerfully focused strategy. It's the search for what are called the neural correlates of consciousness, or, more simply, the NCCs. The word correlate is just a soft word for a connection or a relationship. Scientists are looking for the precise flicker of activity in the brain that reliably appears every single time you have a specific conscious experience and disappears when the experience fades. And the key word here, a word that researchers hold very dear, is minimal. The goal is not to find every neuron that is active when you see, for example, the color red. Many of those neurons are involved in things like breathing, or thinking about your dinner, or just keeping the lights on. The real quest is to find the minimal set of neural events that are absolutely required for, and sufficient to produce, the experience of seeing red. The smallest possible pattern of brain activity for one specific conscious feeling. It's the search for a biological signature, the quiet, electrical footprint of a single qualia. This, then, is the new treasure map, not a search for a ghost, but for the specific, delicate machinery that gives rise to a single, fleeting thought. And it sets up our next quiet question. How in practice do you even begin to find something so beautifully elusive? So, how do you find that quiet electrical footprint, that minimal fleeting signature of a single conscious feeling, hidden within the roar of 86 billion musicians? It's a beautiful question, and the answer is just as elegant. You can't simply open the brain and look inside while it's busy thinking and feeling. But in the last few decades, science has developed something almost as remarkable, a set of gentle, non-invasive tools that act as quiet windows into the working mind, allowing us to watch the symphony as it plays. Think of one of these tools, called an fMRI, as a way of seeing which parts of the brain are working hardest. It tracks blood flow. The more active a brain region is, the more oxygen it needs, and the fMRI can detect that subtle rush of blood. It's a bit like looking at a map of a city from space at night. You can't see the individual people, but you can see which neighborhoods have all their lights on. It tells you where the music is being played. Then there is another tool, the EEG. If fMRI shows us where the lights are on, EEG listens to the brain's electrical hum. By placing soft sensors on the scalp, it can pick up the faint, rhythmic whispers of millions of neurons firing together. It can't tell you the exact location with perfect precision, but it can tell you about the brain's timing with incredible accuracy. It reveals the beat, the tempo of the music. And with these two sets of windows, scientists can do something truly poetic. They can watch the brain as it decides what to be aware of. Imagine you are shown a picture of a face, but it's flashed so quickly that sometimes you consciously see it, and other times you don't, even though the light entered your eyes in exactly the same way. On the trials where you don't see the face, when it remains unconscious, the tools show a brief, localized flicker of activity in the back of your brain, in the visual centers, a quiet signal that arrived, but then faded into the noise. But on the trials where you report, "Yes, I saw it," something magical happens. The initial flicker is there, but then, a moment later, a great wave of synchronized activity ignites across the brain, a glowing network of communication that spreads to areas in the front and sides, the more evolved parts of the cortex. The signal doesn't just arrive, it gets broadcast. It's the physical, measurable difference between a secret whispered and then forgotten, and a message that is suddenly passed around the entire orchestra, picked up and woven into the grand, ongoing melody. One is a lonely echo, the other is a symphony. And seeing that wave of activity spread so widely, well, that gives us our first major clue as to what consciousness actually is, and how the brain finally composes its beautiful music. That great wave of activity we saw spreading through the brain, it gives us our treasure map. It tells us that consciousness isn't a single, lonely flicker in one dark corner of the mind. It's a broadcast, a message shared far and wide. And so our quiet search for the musicians now turns to the layout of the orchestra itself. Where does this wave of awareness actually go? If we follow its glowing path, which parts of the brain light up? And what does that tell us about how the symphony of the self is composed? For a long time, many researchers believed the conductor must be standing at the very front of the brain, in a region called the prefrontal cortex. And it makes a kind of intuitive sense. This is the sophisticated modern part of your brain, the part responsible for planning your day, for reflecting on your own thoughts, for your personality. It seemed like the very seat of the high-level awareness that makes you you. It felt like the natural place for the self to live. But in recent years, our gentle gaze has been drawn somewhere else, to the back of the brain, to a sprawling area of interconnected regions that some scientists have poetically named the posterior cortical hot zone. It includes parts of the brain that process what you see, what you hear, and what you feel, and the evidence now seems to suggest that this, right here, might be where the raw feeling of phenomenal consciousness is born. If the prefrontal cortex is the part that says, "I am seeing red," this hot zone in the back seems to be where the actual private, indescribable experience of redness itself happens. It's the stage, not the conductor's office. And of course, for any of that to happen, the sensory information has to arrive at the concert hall in the first place. This is the job of a beautiful, deeply nestled structure called the thalamus. Think of it as the grand central gateway for the senses. Almost everything you see, hear, and touch passes through the thalamus, which then relays those signals onward to the correct parts of the cortex. It's the gatekeeper that decides which messages get to enter the main hall to be played as part of the symphony. And so a quiet, more elegant picture begins to emerge. It's not about one single spot. Instead, it seems to be a flowing conversation between these key hubs. A sensory signal arrives through the gateway of the thalamus. It's then played as a raw, conscious experience on the great stage of the posterior hot zone. And then that music is heard by the prefrontal cortex in the front, which interprets it, puts a name to it, and plans what to do with it. One part feels the note. Another part makes a story out of it. Consciousness, then, is not the instrument, nor the musician, nor even the stage. It is the music that flows between them, the beautiful, resonant echo that makes the whole building sing. And just like that, a picture begins to form, doesn't it? A quiet, shimmering map of awareness inside the head. We can see the glowing hubs of activity, the flowing conversation between the part of the brain that senses and the part that knows. It feels like we are finally homing in on the source. We have found the stage where the symphony is played. And yet, even with this beautiful map in our hands, we arrive at the edge of a quiet but profound chasm, a gap between knowing where something happens and understanding how it can happen at all. Let's return to our orchestra one last time. We now have a blueprint of the concert hall. We know which musicians play. When you feel a certain way, we can see the sheet music, the precise physical actions of the violinist's bows, the vibrations traveling through the air. We have a perfect correlation, a moment-by-moment description of the physical events that create the music. But none of that explains why the music makes you feel anything. How does a pattern of sound waves become a feeling of soaring joy, or a quiet, creeping sense of nostalgia? Knowing which instruments are playing a C sharp doesn't explain the feeling of hearing it. One is a description of the world, the other is an experience of it. This is the gentle, but enormous, leap we must now attempt to make. Finding the parts of the brain that light up when you feel happy is not the same as explaining how that electrical fizzing can possibly be happiness. And so our quiet journey must take another turn. We have to move from the where to the how. We must now gently explore the great comprehensive theories of consciousness, the brave, elegant, and sometimes competing stories that try to explain how exactly the machine finally learns to compose its own music. And so, as we promised, let's begin our quiet tour of the great modern theories of consciousness. Our first stop is perhaps one of the most elegant and intuitive stories science has to tell about how the mind works. To understand it, let's imagine your brain as a vast, dark theater, brimming with countless specialist actors, all working on their own specific tasks in the shadows. In one corner, a group is quietly processing the gentle hum of the room around you. In another, a different troupe is noticing the soft weight of your blanket. And in the back, yet another is retrieving a faint, distant memory of a childhood afternoon. All of this happens at once, an ocean of unconscious processing. But then, one of these actors, holding one very important piece of information, is called to step into a single brightly lit spotlight on the center of the stage. Suddenly, what was a private, localized activity becomes a public performance. The information in that spotlight is broadcast out to the entire audience, to all the other specialist systems in the darkness. That spotlight, that is consciousness. This beautiful and simple picture is known as the global workspace theory. It proposes that our conscious experience is whatever information currently has access to this central stage, this global workspace, allowing it to be shared widely and flexibly. The brain takes one vital message at a time from a sea of unconscious activity and makes it available for all the other systems to use for planning, memory, and weaving together our coherent inner world. It has a quiet elegance, doesn't it? It helps explain why your experience feels like a single unified stream, even as your brain juggles 1,000 tasks just beneath the surface. At any given moment, there is only one thought, one feeling, or one perception held in that warm spotlight of awareness. The global workspace gives us a beautiful blueprint for the architecture of access, but it also leaves us with a quiet, lingering question. It explains the stage and the spotlight and the broadcast, but does it explain what it feels like to be illuminated by the light itself? Let's stay with that gentle image of the theater for just a moment longer. That single bright spotlight on an otherwise dark stage. Think of what that spotlight really does. It takes one actor, one piece of information, out of the silent, private work being done in the shadows, and it presents it to everyone. It makes that information public knowledge for the rest of the mind. The faint floral taste of the tea you're sipping, the soft pressure of the pillow behind your head, or a sudden fleeting memory of a song from years ago. Each of these can, for a moment, be the star of the show. And all the other specialists in the brain, the countless other actors waiting in the wings, are the audience. The part of your brain that forms long-term memories can now see what's on stage and decide whether to write it down. The part that plans your next action can use that information to make a choice. The part that controls language can put a name to it. The information in the spotlight becomes globally available. It is broadcast. And this is why your inner world feels like a single flowing stream of awareness, rather than a chaotic chorus of 1,000 different thoughts at once. There is only one spotlight, only one main event at any given moment. Your attention is simply the mechanism that moves that beam of light from one actor to the next, moment by moment. It's an elegant and powerful idea, isn't it? It explains the function of consciousness, how a brain that is doing a million things at once creates one single, coherent reality for you to experience. It's the brain's beautiful, efficient solution for deciding what matters most, right now. The theater model, with its bright, lonely spotlight, gives us a beautiful and functional story for how the brain manages its overwhelming flow of information. It explains how one single message gets chosen, gets broadcast, and becomes available for you to act on, to remember, to name. It is a powerful theory of the mind's inner workspace. But it leaves us with that same quiet, lingering question we've been carrying all along. Why does it feel like anything to be illuminated by that light? It explains the function of the broadcast, but not the feeling of the show itself. And so, we arrive at our second major theory of consciousness, a theory that starts not with the brain's function, but with the nature of experience itself. It asks a different, and perhaps even deeper question, not what consciousness does, but what kind of a thing it must be. This is integrated information theory, or IIT. It proposes that consciousness isn't something a system does, but a fundamental quality of its very structure. It is a measure of a system's complexity, and more importantly, its internal unity. To understand this, let's go back to an even simpler image than a theater. Imagine a single, humble photodiode, the tiny sensor that detects light in a digital camera. It can be on or off. It contains one bit of information, but no one would say that it is conscious. Now imagine millions of these photodiodes, arranged in a grid, like the sensor in your phone. Together they contain a vast amount of information, a whole picture of the world, but they are not connected to each other. You could cut the sensor in half, and you wouldn't have destroyed a single unified experience. You'd just have two smaller sensors. Now imagine a different kind of system, one where every part is connected to every other part, in a vast, intricate web, a system where the state of any one part depends on the state of all the others. Here you can't simply cut it in half, because the system exists as a whole. To break it apart is to shatter it completely. This, IIT proposes, is the crucial difference. Consciousness is found in systems that are both rich in information, meaning they have a huge number of possible states they can be in, and deeply integrated, meaning they cannot be broken down into independent parts without losing the whole. And here is the most elegant part of the theory. It claims that this property of integrated information can be measured. It can in principle be calculated as a precise number. A number called phi. Phi is a measure of how irreducible a system is, how much the whole is truly more than the sum of its parts. An awake and aware human brain, with its trillions of interwoven connections, has an almost unimaginably high phi, but that same brain in a deep, dreamless sleep, or under anesthesia, loses that deep integration. Its phi plummets, and with it, consciousness fades. And so, IIT makes a bold, almost poetic claim. Consciousness is not a magical property of biological brains. It is a fundamental feature of any system, anywhere in the universe, that has a sufficiently high phi. Wherever there is a certain threshold of complex, integrated information, there is a flicker of what it is like to be a quiet, inner glow. And so, with this quiet new idea, we must gently set aside the image of the theater and its lonely spotlight. IT invites us to picture consciousness not as something that happens to a network, but as the very nature of the network itself. It is not a light being shone on information. It is the intricate shimmering pattern of the information itself, woven into a single unified fabric. Imagine a vast and delicate web of light, where every thread is connected to every other, the experience of a single moment, say the gentle coolness of the air on your skin, isn't a message being passed around this web. It is the web, it is the specific, unique, and breathtakingly complex pattern that all the threads form together in that one instant. To change even a single thread is to change the entire pattern. You cannot isolate one part without affecting the whole. This is so different from the spotlight, which separates the actor from the audience, the information from the processors. Here in this view, there are no separate parts. There is only the whole, integrated, and irreducible shape of experience. The feeling of being is not something the system has. It is something the system is not. And so consciousness is not the spotlight, but the light itself, woven into the very shape of the moment. The experience is the circuit, fully and quietly alive. And so, where does this quiet journey leave us? We have taken a gentle stroll through two of the grandest halls of modern thought. In one, we saw consciousness as a bright, lonely spotlight on a vast mental stage. A beautiful story of what our awareness does when it broadcasts a single vital message to the rest of the mind. In the other, we saw it as a single, shimmering, irreducible web of light, where to be aware is not to receive a message, but to be the intricate shape that the whole system makes together, a story of what our awareness fundamentally is. One is a theory of function, the other, a theory of feeling. And both are so elegant, aren't they? They give us a language, a set of beautiful metaphors to hold on to as we ponder this most intimate of mysteries. But here, we must be humble. The truth is, for all their poetic power, neither the theatre nor the web is the final, settled answer. They are theories. They are compelling stories, told by brilliant minds, but they are not yet proven fact. Each one has its quiet critics, its own set of lingering, unanswered questions. The science of consciousness, you see, is still in its infancy. It's a bit like our ancestors' first attempts to map the world. Some drew the continents too large. Others placed mighty sea serpents in the vast, unexplored oceans. Those early maps weren't wrong. Exactly, they were just the very beginning of a much, much longer journey. And that is where we find ourselves now, standing in the quiet dawn of a new science, holding these different, sometimes competing, maps. Both point towards something profound, both guide our exploration, and the fact that we don't yet have the final definitive chart of our own inner world, well, that isn't a failure. It is simply an invitation to keep wondering. And so we gently put those beautiful, incomplete maps away for the night, the theatre, the web, and all the other elegant stories that science is learning to tell about itself. Our quiet tour of the great halls of modern thought has reached its end, not with a final answer, but with a deeper, more profound appreciation for the question. Maybe tonight's journey was never about finding the single definitive source of the music. Perhaps it was simply about learning to listen more closely to the symphony that is playing right now inside of you. Because for all the talk of neural correlates, global workspaces, and the intricate mathematics of phi, the mystery of consciousness always returns to this one. Simple, undeniable fact, the feeling of being here. It's the quiet awareness that is listening to my voice, the gentle sensation of the air in the room, cool against your skin, the specific, personal weight of the blanket that covers you. These are not abstract problems to be solved. They are the texture of your existence. Remember at the beginning of our journey, we spoke of a fair trade, swapping a few moments of rest for a deeper sense of wonder about what it means to be awake at all. And I hope, as you lie here now, that you feel the quiet truth of that bargain. The mystery hasn't vanished. If anything, it's closer, more intimate, to know that the most familiar thing in the universe, the simple feeling of being you, is also the deepest of all cosmic puzzles. Well, that's a wondrous thought to carry with you into the quiet lands of sleep. It means the simple act of waking up tomorrow is a miracle. It means the taste of your morning coffee is a kind of unsolved magic. It means that the ghost has not been banished from the machine. It has simply been rediscovered, woven into every wire and every circuit, singing a song that we are only just beginning to hear. And now, there is nothing left to figure out, nothing more to explore tonight. There is only this moment, this quiet, this gentle descent into rest, where the symphony of awareness will, for a little while, play itself a soft and peaceful lullaby. So settle in just a little deeper now, and sleep well.